Today on Week in Review, federal election campaigning is well underway. There's controversy over election signs. And Caleb Cabs introduces GPS. Hello, and thank you for joining us for Week in Review, this second week of April 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. In a historic vote for the Kitsillis peoples, the outcome is yes by eligible voters on the ratification of the Kitsillis Treaty and Self-Government Constitution. Christine Boyle, Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, said that of the more than 95% of eligible voters who voted on the treaty and constitution, 85% voted yes on the treaty and 81% voted yes on the constitution. For the treaty and constitution to be ratified, each vote required a double majority. That means more than 50% of eligible voters on the voters list needed to cast a ballot, and more than 50% of those voters needed to cast a ballot in favor of the treaty and constitution. These thresholds were met. The next step for British Columbia to ratify the treaty, then all parties sign, and finally Canada ratifies. Provincial and federal ratification involves the BC Legislature and Canadian Parliament, each passing treaty implementation legislation. Boyle says the Kitsillis Treaty is a path to self-governance, recognition of rights, collaborative resource management, and new economic opportunity. And the focus was on industry in Terrace Monday as Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre brought his campaign to the north. Here's more.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in Terrace today to reveal the plan for a one-and-done rule, which would fast-track resource projects that get stuck in the federal approval process.
One desk called the Rapid Resource Project Office will handle all regulatory approvals across all levels of government so businesses don't have to waste time navigating through dozens of different agencies at 3 different levels of government. The double process right now where you have to do the exact same environmental review 3 different times for 3 different levels of government. We'll merge them together, one and done.
But former MLA Nathan Cullen has some critique for the proposed one-and-done system.
What he's missing is, through relationship and understanding, the province of BC has already been able to make agreements with First Nations to have what's called a joint environmental assessment process. So with the Teltan, over particular mines, we'll say, let's do the environmental assessment together. But you can't force that. You can't force that politically, and you can't force that legally. He can introduce whatever bill he wants, that it's going to be one permit and you're all going to say yes. And that will get shot down immediately by a thing called the Constitution of Canada. So unless he's planning to also change the Constitution, this is garbage. It's not a real idea. And it's unfortunate because some people will say, oh, maybe that makes sense. It's illegal. It would not work.
Poilievre's plan includes a commitment to approve Phase 2 of the LNG Canada project. The second phase would include 2 new processing lines that would double the plant's capacity to 28 million tons of LNG per year.
I should point out, we are selling natural gas for $4 per British thermal unit to the Americans. It goes for $15 in Europe. So we're selling something for $4 that we could be getting $15 for, but for the fact that we don't have any export terminals that can move the gas overseas. All of them blocked by the Liberals. Only one is nearing completion, and that is LNG Canada here in this region, over in Kitimat.
A final investment decision on Phase 2 is expected to happen this year before the plant's initial production starts. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
We've previously named one candidate that will be running for Skeena-Balkley in this upcoming election. That's Ellis Ross for the Conservative Party. But a few more candidates to note will be running in the district.
We are now less than a month away of knowing who the next Prime Minister of Canada will be, with Mark Carney calling a federal snap election only a few weeks ago. And for the Skeena-Balkley region, there are 4 candidates looking to make their mark here in the Northwest. starting with the NDP led by Taylor Backrack. The current member of parliament is focused on combating against the Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre.
The way to stop that, because Pierre Poilievre sounds an awful lot like Donald Trump these days, the way to stop that is to vote NDP in this riding.
For Skeena Bulkley in the Conservative Party, it is led by Alice Ross, who will be looking to repeal Bill C-69, which is the assessment for environmental and economic impacts, including the rights of Indigenous people before a major resource or infrastructure project can officially get started up. The Liberals, who are led by Inderpal Dillon, was nominated last week.
So I will bring that funds in our region so that we can invest in ports, in railways, highway, and to make this region a trade hub.
And the Christian Heritage Party will be led by Rod Taylor, who will look to end income tax and implement mandatory balanced budgets.
Neither the Liberals nor the Conservatives, and certainly not the NDP, have ever figured out how to balance a budget. It's been many years since we've had balanced budgets. We're now $1.2 trillion in the hole.
It's an interesting time for an election where Canadians will have to think away from unity to some extent, but all those running still find themselves on the same side of the border.
That means very targeted retaliatory tariffs to put pressure on the Americans. And at the same time, we need to do everything that we can to protect Canadian workers and protect Canadian families.
Previously, we put all our eggs in one basket. Our 77% of trade was with the US. So now this situation arises only to that decision. So now this is the time we have to diversify.
We're not going to force Donald Trump and the United States into a corner and make them do our will. If we would just clean up our border and deal with those issues, maybe this tariff situation would go away. We think that we should just clean up our act. And if we weren't so deeply in debt, these tariffs wouldn't be so terrifying to our Canadian industries and businesses. But this debt is killing us, and that's something that we need to deal with.
With the federal election campaign well underway, one First Nations band in Northwest BC is calling out the placement of political signs without permission. Here's more.
The Gitwangak Band is calling out the Conservative Party for not asking permission before placing their signage on Gitwangak territory. Elected Chief Sandra Laren says that after the Conservative signs popped up without notice, the band respectfully asked the Conservatives to remove the signs.
And we said it was fine if there was any individual who wanted them on their property, or if he had sought approval from our rights and title holders, who are our hereditary chiefs, and he could convey that, then we would also be fine with it.
Ellis Ross did respond to CFTK-TV about the signs. He said it was his team's understanding that the signs were placed on the provincial right-of-way.
He actually, it wasn't him, it was the campaign team, simply came back and said, can you take pictures of where they are because they're on a right-of-way, which is a very colonial way of thinking, and it just reinforces our point that he's not respecting how to have respectful dialogue with Indigenous peoples in this area especially. And so we wrote that back saying, we don't think that way. We'd still appreciate you removing them, and still no acknowledgement of how we were feeling or the reason, and came back and said, are you asking everybody to take them off? And, quite frankly, Taylor Backrack, the NDP candidate in the area, always asks for permission ahead of time, and has relationships with our hereditary chiefs, so it's not even a question. Because he does engage respectfully, he won't ever do anything like that. Whereas Ellis Ross won't even have, a respectful dialogue back and forth.
Laren says that currently the band does not have plans to remove the signs themselves.
That remains to be seen. Other areas have taken it upon themselves to just physically remove them themselves. I don't think I want to be feeding into that kind of behavior and model that for our children. I think You know, we don't want there to be hate and anger and resentment and retaliation.
CFTK-TV did reach out to the BC government on the legalities of highway shoulders on Indigenous land, but did not receive clarification before deadline. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
MP for Skeena-Balkley Valley Taylor Bachrach has joined a few others in calling out Poilievre for refusing to remove a candidate of the Conservative Party. A letter was released last Friday, signed by 37 elected and formerly elected officials, urging the Conservative Party to withdraw their endorsement of Aaron Gunn, who is a candidate for the North Island Powell River riding. The letter states that Gunn made statements in the past denying the impacts of residential schools, generational trauma, and genocide experienced by First Nations peoples in Canada. Gunn took to social media to deny that those were his beliefs, saying, "I have always been firm in recognizing the truly horrific events that transpired in residential schools, and any attempt to suggest otherwise is simply false." MP Bachrach released a statement calling on Poilievre to reject all prospective Conservative candidates who deny the lived experience of residential school survivors. Bachrach said to allow someone to run who denies those harms sends a troubling message to First Nations people in the region. Poilievre has called the allegations against Gunn misinformation. Up next, the new executive director of the Terrace Chamber of Commerce. Terrace RCMP have arrested a man for pointing a firearm and uttering threats. On April 9th, around 8 o'clock p.m., Terrace RCMP say they received a report of a man who had pointed a firearm at another person and threatened to kill them. Police attended the address on the 5200 block of Hallowell Avenue to find the man had returned inside his home. The man was the only person inside and would not cooperate with police callouts. His behavior escalated and he was considered to be armed and barricaded. Terrace RCMP say they consulted with the Prince George Emergency Response Team and Police Dog Service to effect a safe arrest. Terrace RCMP contained the residents until the Emergency Response Team and Police Dog Service arrived to assist. At approximately 3:30 a.m. April 10th, the man was taken into custody after suffering a bite from the police dog service. He was arrested for uttering threats and pointing a firearm and was taken to hospital to receive medical attention for his injury. Police say they were granted a search warrant for the residence and seized numerous firearms. The man was released from custody with a court date and a first appearance and several related conditions. The investigation is ongoing and results will be submitted to the BC Prosecution Services for consideration of charges. No further information is being released by the RCMP at this time. And next, we get to meet the new executive director of the Terrace Chamber of Commerce. Have a look.
All these letters, and this is what this says. Thank you for seeing something in me I didn't realize existed.
Ward Skinner has spent the past 30 years in the business consulting sector, helping companies get organized and grow.
The lessons I've learned over the years, doing what I've done, and helping people, to see people that have kept in touch. And it's been 20 years since we did business together, and they still send text messages and emails.
And now he's bringing those skills to the Terrace and District Chamber of Commerce as the new executive director.
As simple as it sounds, we're here to help. So there's all these businesses out there that everybody wants to chase the big companies because they got big wallets. But what about the little guy? What about the guy that's one or two or three people in their business and they're hanging on by a thread? Maybe they don't know, I mean, they think, well, this is the way a business is supposed to be. Well, not always. There are answers out there. We have got, aside from what I can do, but we have got people that are tax experts as part of the Chamber of Commerce. We have people that are legal aspects of it. There's people, sales, manufacturing practices.
Skinner says he wants to see the place thrive.
This is about making this wonderful little town very successful. In one aspect, I don't want to see high-rise apartments going up or, great big skyscrapers. I love the small town atmosphere here. But why don't we make this a really good place for everybody?
Now, this coming Friday, April 11th, the Chamber will be hosting an all-candidates forum for the upcoming federal election at the Terrace Sportsplex from 5:30 to 9 p.m., with casual conversation until 6:45 and moderated discussion from 7 to 9. Skinner says this is a great opportunity to have your voice heard.
We would ask that anybody that wants to, please come. Have your voices heard. I mean, it's a chance to talk, to ask a question that might be bugging you half to death. Well, come and ask. Find out what they have to say. I mean, now more than ever, it's very important that people get involved with the events that are going on around the world. I won't get any more direct than that, okay? That, boy, you better stand up and be counted.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
There will also be all candidates forums happening in both Kitimat and Houston. In Kitimat at the Mount Elizabeth Theatre on April 15th from 6 to 9 p.m. and in Houston on April 16th at the Houston Community Hall at 7 p.m. The BC Conservative Party raked in more than $6.5 million last year as it came close to edging out the NDP government in the provincial election last fall. Elections BC has released the 2024 annual financial reports showing the New Democrats raised nearly $8.2 million last year. The BC Greens have received an extension to the filing deadline until May 16th due to what the elections agency calls extenuating circumstances. Elections BC notes BC United, which folded its election campaign last year, did not submit its report by the March 31st deadline. In their weekly report covered by the final few days of March and the start of April, the Kitimat RCMP talked about an incident that they also used as an opportunity to give out some advice. A residential mailbox in the Nechako neighborhood got stolen, but thanks to some CCTV footage being able to capture the incident, police officers were able to identify the suspect in the case, find their location, and even return the package to its owner. The RCMP reminded people not to post crime photos or footage online, since it could end up jeopardizing an investigation in the future and also result in a guilty party going free. After the break, Calum Cabs introduces a GPS system. The University of British Columbia says it's launching a 4-year Bachelor of Indigenous Land Stewardship program, a first of its kind in Canada. A statement from the university says the program was co-developed by Indigenous leaders and the school's Faculty of Forestry. The program will integrate Indigenous science and knowledge with courses in ecological sciences, governance, law, economics, and business management. The school says the program is designed to meet students where they live, with the option of remote learning in their home communities, in addition to plans for 3 learning hubs, the first of which will be established in the Caribou-Chilcotin region. And a new system will be in place for Calum Cabs to track the trips of their drivers using an application called Fleetio, which they say will bring much more organization to the company. Here's Damien Smith with more.
Just over a year ago, changes in the management positions were made to Calum Cabs to ensure that going forward, customer relations would be of the utmost priority.
And just last week, the company announced that they will be tracking the majority of details of each ride.
What we have installed is totally dedicated to check every part of the vehicle, like if there's a fast acceleration by the driver, if there's a crash, if there's a harsh braking, right? All those kind of things. And there's a trip history for more than 300 hours over there if we have to go check what's going on.
The company is not looking to stop just there, however. They are still looking to get through the Passenger Transportation Board of British Columbia to install new cameras in the vehicles to show authenticity in their rides, similar to what Uber, Lyft, and many other apps have applied around the world. And another component that they are heavily focused on going forward is a panic button for their drivers. With their office in Terrace, it doesn't mean that they won't be taking long-distance trips outside of the area.
So our main concern is like some of the people make misconception about the taxi company. Like if something happened or not, we see anonymous post every day about the taxi company. So our main focus is to reach us first. That's why our main priority is to put the panic button and the camera and everything. So people will not say anything like off the track.
Until recent memory, the company was in the wrong headlines this past September, where a man was killed in Thornhill by a driver who quickly fled back to his home country. And according to the company, these GPS systems were already in the works before the tragedy, which happened about 7 months ago.
At that time, it was not part of the system, but like since we took over the company last April, we are looking to improve the system. So all these systems are new. The GPS system just started last week, and for the future, if anything happens, we will know right away on that side.
From CFTK-TV, I'm Damian Smith.
The proposed delay of the demolition of the historic Kin Hut building was voted on at a recent Terrace City Council meeting. The main consideration was what could happen if they approved a recently proposed project that would delay the demolition of the former World War II Army Hospital by another year and allow the district and Terrace Museum Society to conduct a structural assessment. Several councillors were not in favor of the delay. The Museum Society planned to avoid getting financial support from the city to do the project, and some councillors contested that idea. And while others were in favor of the delay, the final vote determined that demolition will go ahead as scheduled. Still to come, the district of Kitimat considers a year-round market. The district of Kitimat and the Kitimat Chamber of Commerce have partnered up to look into if an outdoor market space in Kitimat's downtown area would be feasible or not. The district and chamber have prepared a couple of surveys. One is meant for the general public to give their input, and the other is for prospective market vendors. This possible built-in market area would exist year-round. Funds for this study are coming from the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. The first quarter from the BC Northern Real Estate Board has been released. In Hazelton, 8 properties worth $1.6 million have been purchased so far this year. Prince Rupert has seen 30 properties sold, with 21 of them being single-family residences. Terrace has sold 59 so far, worth about $29 million in total. And Kitimat has seen 28 units sold, worth $11.6 million. Washington-based researchers say a newborn calf has been spotted swimming with a pod of endangered killer whales off the coast of Victoria. The Centre for Whale Research says one of its biologists spotted the calf with J-pod, part of the larger population of southern resident killer whales. The latest calf is the 4th born among the southern residents of the past year, with the centre saying it's a sign of hope for this endangered community. Confirmation of the birth comes less than 2 months after researchers spotted a newborn calf in February that followed the death of another. That wraps up this edition of Week in Review. Join us for CFTK-TV News weeknights at 5, 6, 6:30, and 11. You can also find us online at CFTK-TV.com or on social media. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, and X. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your weekend.